Some last minute returners came in. We're going to talk about how this affects this upcoming draft in just over a month, as well as parts of the 2025 draft coming up on Locked On NBA Big Board. Thank you to everybody who makes Locked On NBA Big Board the first listen of your day. My name is Richard Stayman, aka MavsDraft. I do in-depth and scouting reports that replicate what the NBA teams do. I'm joined by James Barlowe. He is Rafael Barlowe's brother, and also in addition to that, though, he is a very intelligent draft mind. He sees the game extremely well. I think over the past few weeks, we've really started to see eye to eye on just a lot of different things. We see the game similarly. He's one of the best minds out here. I think if you're familiar with the show, you've seen him a lot for a good reason. James, how are you doing today? We had a very busy end of the deadline. A lot of names came in the morning, or even some in the afternoon. Almost every single person listed here on the side. What do you think about some of these?
It's some of it's not surprising. Me and Leif talked about it last night, and like guys like Mark Sears did surprise me. Coleman Hawkins did surprise me. Hunter Salas definitely surprised me, and it's funny. And I tweeted it like right after, so we closed we finished up last night, and we kind of did it purposely to like wait to kind of see who was going to trickle in, and like Jamir Watkins returns to school, so it was like this guy. So I thought we were done, and then, you wake up and more guys are coming out, and we're going to talk about those guys. So,
yeah, I lost. Let me count up how many top 50 or 60 guys I lost. Alex Karaban, I had a first-round grade on. JT Toppin snuck in there at the end. Hunter Salas, I had close to first. He was close to the first. Mm-hmm. Jamir Watkins was in my draftable range. Nique Clifford was at the end. That was it for me. I know you talked about Mark Sears, but I mean, he's just not getting any taller. Good for him for getting the NIL money, but like, he's not getting taller. His kind of clock has expired on getting drafted, I think. But let's talk about guys like, Tyon Grant Foster, I was a little bit lower on, but I think with him, he's older. He has the heart stuff in the past. He's going to be 25 next year. I really think he should have stayed in. I was really shocked by that. Let's start with him. What do you think about Tyon Grant Foster returning?
So I had him in the early 30s. I still think he can play like tomorrow if you needed him. I mean, again, he's older, he's mature, he's athletic. I think he has the potential to be a very, very good defender at the next level with his length and athleticism. I think he is a better shooter than the numbers indicate. I know he had to take a lot of tough shots at Grand Canyon because he was the man there. But he had good catch and shoot numbers. So I was comfortable with him at like 33, 34 maybe. And like I was taking a nap and I got a notification. Somebody, added me and said Tyon Grant Foster was going back to school. And I was like, man, let me click on this tweet to see if this is a reputable source. And it turns out he's going back to school. I don't understand it. And I don't think he's in the portal either. So I don't know if I guess he's going back to Grand Canyon. I know Grand Canyon has some money, but it just kind of is baffling to me.
Yeah, and that's my thing is like with Tyon is, okay, you're a little bit older. Like at least transfer up. It would be his fourth school. I get it. Really fifth because he was at community college. But I feel like why not prove you can go play in like a Power 6? Like every Power 6 team would have wanted you. Every NCAA Final Four team would have wanted him. So I get it. Like you said, there's some money at Grand Canyon, but like they better be scheduling the best out of conference schedule the entire year, which Gonzaga exists. So they're not gonna, but I have some concerns about that. I just don't know how much better he can get in a better class. I thought he had a decent chance of getting drafted. Again, I wasn't super high on him, but I do think he was somebody that he could have done like better off, I think, just staying in the draft. But NIL money, again, it's always going to come down to that. The other guy I think that was a pretty big shock to be back was Jamir Watkins. I heard a lot of stuff about him at the combine. A lot of people were questioning this from teams, just different personnel, right? Where they're saying, well, his just feel for the game isn't there. Like, and it's a mental thing where he's just a lot of them are questioning how smart he truly is on the basketball court. And it's not necessarily like decisions. It's just, can he ever get over that hump? And maybe in college that'll help. I think talent and skill wise, he's 100% NBA ready. It just really does come down to, is he ever going to be that kind of like, you have to have the 1 percentile smart to stick in the NBA. And like, when you're not there, every little thing matters more. What do you think of Jamir Watkins going back?
I don't get it. I feel like next year's draft is stronger. And it's like, I know he had some things he had to work on, but I just feel like, and it's not just him, but it's like these kids, and it's easy to say because I don't have that dollar sign in front of me too. But I know these kids, like, you work your whole life to get to this point, and it's like, 2024 draft isn't the strongest. You could go from being the 20th pick it just takes one team to like you. So like him going back to school, I think it's a risk because are you going to be put in a position that is going to make you more attractive to the NBA next year? Because again, these college coaches are going to tell you like, hey man, you come back, you boost your stock. We can work on this, we can work on that, but ultimately they're trying to win, and some of it is recruitment because that's what college coaches have to do. But I thought he was going to be at worst in the 40s because again he fits the profile, he defends, and it's like I just don't feel like spending time on a two-way or even as a second-round pick in a G League is a bad thing. And I feel like some of these guys think it's a terrible thing. And it's like you still get your opportunity to play. We know, and especially in this draft, if you in the right situation, March, April, there are going to be minutes available. So, I mean, like, look at Gigi. Look at Gigi Jackson. Guys got hurt, and he took full advantage of that opportunity, and he can get a standard deal. So it's like, these two, Jamir Watkins, Tyon Grant Foster, I don't personally understand, but I don't have all the information at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, how many of the first round players this last year went to the G League? It was probably almost half, if not more. Like being a G League player for a year, Jett Howard was there the entire year, and he was a lottery pick. Like it's not as bad as it once was 10 years ago. It's not the D League. They intentionally changed the G League name to that because of the connotations. And like, I just feel like it's outdated at this point. I get it. Like money talks. Like you said, we don't have that responsibility next to us with this, but it does come down to like, get your money for sure. But sometimes opportunity, like losing money for a year to gain money 4 years from now, like you kind of have to look at it that way. And it's a risk. It's always going to be a risk. But most of these guys, if they're getting drafted, they can probably make the NIL money back in Europe. Like depending on where you go, if you can play in high level Europe, like it's actually not that unreasonable to think.
Yeah, and I just feel like there's just going to be so much movement this offseason in the NBA. Like you just don't know what's going to happen. Like I think a lot of these teams are going to have to hit the restart button, and some are going to hit the restart button if they don't get off to a fast start. So I just feel, I mean, it's hard to look into the future, but I just, I don't know, man. Sometimes I think that the upfront money overpowers the money that you can get down the line, and it's a tough decision. I get it.
Yeah, I hear that. Fully echo it.
All right, so before we talk about these next guys, let me tell you about our sponsor for today, which happens to be FanDuel. So FanDuel, it's a winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. All right. Now, let me tell you something about the Locked On Network. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for your everyday to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube for free and the Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Sportscast Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the last segment, we talked about Jamir Watkins. We talked about Tyon Grant Foster. This one here, let me throw this one to you, Rich. Jaxson Robinson had some buzz, had some talent. He was at BYU last year. I know he flirted with the draft this year, but now he's going to Kentucky to follow Mark Pope. What were your thoughts on his decision?
Yeah, he had Kentucky Twitter in absolute shambles. That was honestly a very fun roller coaster to watch. It's funny with him. I actually think he made the right decision. I know the NIL money there is good. He is somebody I think that he would have gotten picked apart in the pre-draft process more just looking at the stats. He was heralded as a top shooter. This year was his best career number from three, high volume. So the number isn't actually as bad as it sounds, but only 35%, 91% from the line on only one full trip to the line a game. So 2 free throws a game. 43% from the field was a career high. He didn't really do much outside of shooting. 2.5 rebounds, 1.3 assists, a combined 1 steal and block. Didn't really turn the ball over a ton, but he still had more turnovers than assists. I think at Kentucky, where there's more eyes on him, he has a better roster around him. Can he make everyone else around him better? That was my whole knock on him. I was like, okay, we've talked about this a lot. This is one of my favorite things, by the way, talking with James, because we both do this, and I don't think it's as common as it should be. But if you watch someone's worst game, it tells so much about them. And when you watch Jaxson Robinson's worst games, you didn't know he was on the floor. He's fully invisible. That's my concern. He's got to work on being there more. And it's something that, sometimes when seniors do things like these 5th-year seniors, when they do these things of like getting improved, getting better, you kind of wonder, well, is it because they're older or are they actually getting better? And is this something sustainable that can be translated up to the NBA? And I think with Jaxson Robinson, if he did some of these things, just simply making everyone around him better with more talent, that translates up.
Yeah, I agree. But it will be interesting to see because like he had a lot of usage at BYU, but Kentucky brought in some guys. The kid from Dayton, Bria. Is it Bria?
Yeah, Kobe Bray, I think.
Kobe Bray, excuse me. He's going to come in and he's a playmaking shooting guard. He can shoot. Who do they bring in at the point guard position? I'm drawing blanks right now.
Oh, crap. I should have pulled this up.
I'll get back to you. But like
really
they
good.
brought in a really good roster. And to matter of fact, like Otega Oweh from Oklahoma, I think he probably transferred to Kentucky. He was the first domino, I believe, that they got. And like he's gonna come off the bench. So it's like if Jaxson Robinson is going back to school for a bigger stage, I think he will get that bigger stage, but I think his role will be diminished because this Kentucky roster has a lot of talent on it. So it will be interesting to see how that works out. Go ahead.
They got 2 guards. It was Lamont Butler and Kirk Risa. That's who it was.
Yes.
Yeah, they got and by the way, side note, next year Travis Perry, he's not going to be Reed Shepherd because he's a multi-year guy, but offensively, there's not that much difference. One of the highest feel for the game players I've ever seen, personally. So watch that Kentucky team. But yeah, they got a really good transfer class. They got one of the best bigs, I think, in the market. Brandon Garrison, I guess in the portal. Like you said, Otega Oweh, Kobe Bray, Andrew Carr's pretty good from Wake Forest. I like him. And then I feel like there's one more, but that might have been Otega Oweh and Jaxson Robinson. That was the other.
So I mean, I think he's going to shoot the ball well. But like you said, his bad games are games where he just does nothing else. Yep. He just misses shots, and he doesn't have like a real high foul rate either. Even though he does handle the ball, which is kind of crazy. And it'd also be interesting to see how much will he handle the ball this next year at Kentucky. Are they going to ask him not to do it because they got a better roster? I know he had to do it so much at BYU because they were kind of limited off the dribble, but he was. I think if he had a good combine and had good feedback, I could have seen him staying in the draft. But I'm actually like not surprised that he did go back to school because I know he's still like really young. I think he played his freshman year at 17 years old at A&M. So the age thing won't really like hurt him as much.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. I forgot he's so young for his class too. Like I'm just looking at his birthday. Yeah, he turns 22 at the end of the year. Like he's going to be the youngest 5th-year senior probably in the country. So there's not a ton to worry about. And at the combine, like I didn't think he did a ton either. Like he didn't really do much in his games. Same thing with kind of Nique Clifford as a transition up to him.
Mm-hmm.
With Nique Clifford, like the thing I remember the most for him is he had a garbage time bucket and he got dunked on by AJ Johnson. It's so funny how we view the combine, like not we, but like we as the draft community and like everybody who ever has scouted, where we're like, well, it happened in the combine. It's hard. And then like we use that over 30 plus games of sample size. I really think Nique Clifford still could have gotten drafted. Like, yeah, he left a sour taste in teams' mouths, but I'm such a like sample size guy where it's like, okay, you get a workout with some teams and 2 games of the combine where you don't have chemistry with your teammates. Pretty easy which one I'm going to trust. So I feel like Nique Clifford took such a jump. He could still get drafted at the end of next year if he's like Mountain West Player of the Year, that kind of thing. But I kind of wanted him to stay in.
I agree with you. Again, it's like, that Colorado State team is going to lose Isaiah Stevens. They're going to lose other guys. And it's like, yeah, you have an increased role, but ultimately, like at the next level, you're going to be a role player. And like, I'm not looking for Nique Clifford to add, like, I'm not drafting him because he does a bunch of things or he's going to be like a playmaking wing or anything like that. Like he's what's the old saying, a lunch pail, hard hat kind of guy. And like, that's what I expect from you. And I just feel like he's another one that, I mean, you stay in the draft and you figure it out. But it'd be interesting to see what that Colorado State team looks like next year. Because again, they're losing guys.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I didn't even realize how much of an anomaly his senior year was. Granted, he came from Colorado, so like it's a little different and his role was massively different. But I mean, this was the first year. There's a lot of different things. Double-digit scoring. Free throw percentage over 70, and he still didn't get to the line that much. That one's the weird one because he shot 52%, most of it being twos. He shot 60% from 2. Like he could get to the rim, but he never got to the line. That one's kind of weird. He only had 0.3 free throws attempts more than Jaxson Robinson. The playmaking was a lot better. Like he did a lot of different things on both ends of the floor without the ball. I think that was something for me where it was like, okay, this feels very real. This felt like a breakout going to the right school rather than a senior anomaly. But he took 3 attempts per game from 3. If he can up his free throw percentage and can repeat that 3-point percentage again, like there's no reason to think this dude can't get drafted.
Yeah. He's going to end up in the NBA eventually. But I just would have liked to have seen him, make that jump a little earlier. But, I get it. Let me ask you about Trevon Brazile. First, I'm not surprised that he went back to school. I don't think the sample size that we talk about, I don't think the sample size was good enough for him to get drafted this year. And the talent obviously is definitely there because he's an athlete and he can shoot. That was year 1 removed from a knee injury.
Yep.
So,
towards ACL a year and a half ago.
It makes sense for him to go back to school. But since he is going back, so he was at Arkansas. He's in the portal, I believe. So he should be one of the top names in the portal. But wherever he lands, I would like to see him be more aggressive. I feel like he just wasn't aggressive last year at Arkansas. Maybe it was the knee injury. I don't know if it's a demeanor thing, but like he just has so much talent, and it would look like he was kind of like coasting. And he just wasn't assertive enough for me last year. So wherever he ends up, I want to see him like leave a bigger imprint on the game. And again, maybe he was hurt, but we'll see. But what do you think about Trevon Brazile?
Yeah, I agree. I felt like his mentality, like it's kind of interesting. I know you don't like this guy, and not a huge fan either. But Kyle Filipowski had a hip surgery, which is not a minor thing, and he still looked like the same aggressive, like the same level of aggression, right, as he was as a freshman. Probably more as the first option in Duke. I think that's what Trevon Brazile needs. Like it's a whole different injury, knee and hip. Like they have different things to them, but also Brazile didn't look like he had his full athleticism back. And ACL, like any knee injury, anybody who's had that kind of stuff knows it takes a while to get that back. Like, and we've seen that in the NBA too. It doesn't even take having it, just knowing that, like Derrick Rose, for example, it's like he's a bad example, but there are players who have torn their ACL and they come back and a few years later, they look like they have that same explosion. But the years in between, it was like, oh, she kind of washed. Like, what's going on with his athleticism? The big thing for me, though, is that assist to turnover ratio. I mean, it might be one of the single worst for non-big. I mean, I think it's up there with like Yves Misi, who's brand new to basketball, which is his different excuse. And he was a freshman. But Trevon Brazile, over the course of college, 40 assists over 3 years. Granted, 60 games. Like 1 year, I guess, kind of doesn't count. He had 1 assist a game as a sophomore before tearing his ACL, but 88 turnovers. So over 2-to-1 turnovers. Like, that is such a red flag. I don't think he gets drafted, even if he's not fixing that, he's not getting drafted. I think it's that simple.
Interesting. Yeah. I saw people, I guess early on, he was getting some first round looks, and then, you watch and he'd have like an 8-point game here, an 8-point game there. And I'm like, man, I can't get down with somebody who has all that talent, all those tools, averaging 8. But I understand also the mental hurdle that comes with, coming off of an injury. All right, before we go to break, let's talk about this last guy. I know this one was like another big, big heartbreaker for mostly everybody in the draft community putting together mocks. Alex Karaban returning to Connecticut.
Man, selfishly, I'm so upset because he was one of my first round grades. This is the fewest first round grades I'll ever give out. It was like low 20s for this year. Normally I eclipse 30 in a good year. It's rough. He was somebody who has such an easy role to stick in the NBA. He shoots at an elite level at 6'8", 6'9". And he also measured pretty well. Actually, he's not even 6'8". Who am I kidding? He measured really terribly in height and then immediately turned around. He measured at 6'6.5" after being listed at 6'7" to 6'9" anywhere he looked, but also measured with his 6'11" wingspan and an almost 9-foot standing reach. So like the physical tools make you think, is there some defensive upside? Even though like when you watch the tape, there's not a ton, but maybe
he looks awkward
for air. Yeah, I mean, maybe, like the way I've heard it though, the best case I've heard in favor of him like turning back to school is one, the NIL money's gonna be insane. He could be a god at UConn. But beyond that, why can't he just be Corey Kispert? Where if he repeats it year after year after year and gets better in a lot of other parts of his game, like Corey Kispert was a lottery pick.
I agree. Yeah, I had Karaban early second round. Again, shooting ability like that translates. But I felt like I heard the rumors of him going back to Connecticut like early on, so it kind of didn't surprise me. But I will say this: I wonder if, well, for one, good luck defending him and Liam McNeely next year because those dudes are going to be 6'8" shooters.
They got NBA wings.
Yeah. They're going to be tough. Like, don't leave them open at all. But I wonder how much of his decision was based on Karaban leaving, thinking he was going to leave. Because, I mean, essentially they played the same position. But, good luck defending them. UConn's going to be tough for a very, very long time. But, yeah, I thought Karaban was going to stay.
Yeah, and also, I got it wrong. Kispert was 15th pick. I apologize. But, yeah, like you said, I mean, just, again, touching on 2025 draft, I said at the beginning we would. Like, at Liam McNeely, don't overthink him. First-round talent. Like, I think his defense is really good. I've heard some people a little down on it. I really buy it. Like you said, 6'7", shoots. One of the smartest players, can pass, dribble a little bit, plays hard. Like, he's going to be – UConn has 2 first-round picks next year if they want just on the wings alone.
Yeah, I 100% agree. They're going to be really good. All right. So before we wrap this up, we're going to come back from a break and we're going to tell you about guys who we think are going to potentially move up in the draft with all of this action. Stay tuned. All right. So in the last segment, we talked about Nique Clifford coming back to school. We talked about Trevon Brazile, Alex Karaban. First segment, we talked about Jamir Watkins and Tyon Grant Foster and Jaxson Robinson. So, according to, I believe, my board, I had first round grades in this particular episode on no one. I think I might have had Jamir Watkins at 30. So if we talk about that in the previous podcast where we had Hunter Sallis going back to school, but overall, like, I need to make adjustments to my mock because that is Jamir Watkins, Tyon Grant Foster, Jaxson Robinson. I thought Nique Clifford was gone. Karaban. I feel like I have about 8 or 9 spots that I have to like readjust. And I was really high on Hunter Sallis. I had him like 13 or 14. So with all of that movement, and it's really ironic, Rich, that all this movement happened at the wing position. So who, in your opinion, who is going to benefit the most with guys going back to school?
Yeah, I think a lot of some of these older wings who have that specialty skill, you look at Jalen Bridges, right? I mean, half these guys we're talking about are wings. Tyon Grant Foster, if you count him as one, Jamir Watkins, Jaxson Robinson, Nique Clifford's a wing. I mean, almost every single player we have here is a wing. Like that to me, it's going to help the Jalen Bridges. Like I said, I think Jacoby Walter's kind of unaffected, but the Keyshawn George, where you have to now decide, okay, there's not as many older guys. Kevin McCullough, John Murphy, like all those guys.
I think off the top of my head, the Kansas guys are going to benefit the most.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, falling back a little bit on Furphy. But now, I mean, I think he's a first round pick. Like, I think he's a lock. I also think it may help guys like Bobby Clintman, who kind of, 3-4s too. I had a second round grade on him. So yeah, this is crazy, man. Like I just want to ball up. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the Jimmy Butler video when he was in Minnesota. I think they gave him like a stat sheet. He was out the game and he did one of these. He like balled it up, threw it over. Like that's what I feel like I have to do with my mock, man. Like I spent a lot of time on that. Like, it took me a week to put that together, but I'm looking at my mock. I think Pacome Dadier in France is gonna. I think he's gonna benefit from that. Another Frenchman, Alexi Aginsa. I think he's gonna benefit.
Melvin. Alexi's nephew.
Yeah. Alexi shout out to Alexi. He was a Charlotte Bobcat.
That was 2011.
I think Justin Edwards is gonna benefit from this.
That is a great shout out. That Justin Edwards, he might be the biggest one. I completely missed him. It's him. He would be my answer. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
he is definitely one of those guys.
That's crazy. Justin Edwards, in my mind, went from, man, this dude is overrated, to, he might be a first round pick again. Because he kind of settled into what he's supposed to be. And you got 7 guys that dropped out of his position.
Yeah, he had 7 guys that all okay, you're probably drafting Jamir Watkins. He may not be right away. I think some of them, Alex Karaban, right? Every guy who drops that takes up something that was supposed to be right away. I'm trying to think of some of the other guys that drops that could have been, but there were like Hunter Sallis too, Peyton Sanford, even like that's 3 guys. And when that happens, like I think people really underestimate with the difference. Like think about it as quarterbacks, wings, and this is any position except probably guards. Like if it's a stretch big or a wings, this is really who applies to. Think about how in the NFL a quarterback goes off the board, right? You have to think, oh crap, like now we need a quarterback. Not sure the Atlanta Falcons like tune this out, but if you need a quarterback, I remember one that always comes to mind is like it makes teams reach, like Christian Ponder when the Minnesota Vikings took him. I remember I was like, wait, what? Because all the quarterbacks are on there. Well, we need a quarterback, and he's the only one left that has a first round grade. We might as well just take him. And it was a bad pick. But teams really I think we underestimate how much that need for a wing is. And like you said, Justin Edwards went from overrated, thought he had star potential, to now he's like, well, he found a defined role because of that as a freshman. Teams will convince themselves maybe there's a little bit more upside for him now than Baylor Shireman. It's a narrative thing. Even though I would gladly take Baylor every day of the week over Justin Edwards, it's still a glimmer of hope, and that's all you need in the NBA draft.
Yeah, I think some of these guys looked at it was, your agent probably called you last night, like, hey, man, we might be a first round pick. Like some of this smoke, it settled on the wing position. Again, like who else did I look at? Pelle Larson? Pelle Larson, like he might move up. He may have been outside of the draft, but you look at him now, he does a lot at the 2 position. So Yeah, I think Harrison Ingram, Malik Lewis. Like, it's just so many names where you're like,
Malik Lewis is going to rise. He was one of my last watches, admittedly, so I've been late to him. But yeah, I feel like it's where there's smoke, there's fire with that stuff too. Every single smart draft Twitter person I know that I've talked to about him has said the exact same thing. Like, how is this dude not on more boards? Like, he's somebody that'll benefit too.
yeah, I did a podcast about him. I think my days are all off of that storm, but I did a podcast about him talking about second round steals and how in like 2 to 3 years you'd be like, man, this dude, where'd he come from? Like, oh, a smart team drafted him and he's available. I had another name on my list. I just drew a blank. But yeah, man, I think Ryan Dunn made himself some more money now because again, he doesn't have to compete with 7, 8 guys. I still think obviously he has the shooting concerns, but Cam Christie, he moved up shooter. So yeah, it's interesting, man, how all of that worked out yesterday in favor of guys. Like all you had to do is just kind of stay the course. And it also kind of like makes me wonder, like, how come other guys, if I'm, not naming somebody, but if I saw 6 guys at the wing position drop out of the draft, I'm like, oh, we got to stay. We definitely got to stay because that's 6 less people that I have to compete with, especially like the older guys like Nique Clifford and Tyon Grant Foster.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I completely echo that. Where it's, I don't know, some of these guys that never thought that we were like, well, are they a first round pick? Like you said, Ryan Dunn. I mean, even who's another one who we haven't talked about? Cam Spencer. I mean, he has a role. He's an advanced stats darling. Like he is in Jonathan Mogbo, same thing, advanced stats darling. Like these are guys that are genuinely going to rise into. Like I don't think Cam Spencer's going to go first round, but Jonathan Mogbo 100% could get there at this point, depending on how he works out. Like he's somebody obviously a little bit different, but he's a jumbo guy. I don't even know. He's not a wing. He's not a forward. I don't know. He's kind of forward, but like he's a weird, like positionless guy. You got to think he benefits too.
Yeah, man. Oh, did I say Harrison Ingram?
Yeah,
I don't know if I mentioned Harrison Ingram, but I think he benefited last night. Literally, he toolsy.
Every single wing, I think you can make an argument it benefited. I mean, like Kashad Johnson probably got a boost. Like any of these guys who are older and have that elite skill to rely on, they all saw a boost.
Before we go, this last one, I know he got a boost. And it's funny, I was talking to my brother offline. He was like, dude, don't be surprised if he goes way higher than people think. AJ Johnson got a boost.
Yeah. I wouldn't draft him personally, but I think he's going to go first round. You could make that like, let's just go back to 2020. This would be the last thing, like you said.
No, you good. Go ahead.
I'm going to read you some of the names 20 to 30. There's going to be a handful of names that you're like, why was this guy drafted? Okay, so it starts with Precious, Maxey, Zeke Naji. They've different ways all of them have stuck. Leandro Bolmaro, RJ Hampton, Emmanuel Quickley stuck, Peyton Pritchard stuck, Udoka Azubuike's barely been there, Jaden McDaniels, Malachi Flynn, Desmond Bain. But 2019, let's just go back there. This one I know has some guys, Darius Baisley, Dylan Windler, Cabin Jelly never really found a role for different reasons. Kevin Porter, I guess, technically, but Ty Jerome, he's barely been there. Every single time you're kind of like, this guy probably shouldn't have been an end of the first round pick. There's exceptions, but you got the Zanon Musas, Jacob Evans, Omari Spellman. At the end of the first round, there's always those random guys, and I feel like AJ Johnson could be that. That wasn't the topic of this show at all. We were here. My thing is, you didn't ask for this again, but 6'4", not a point guard. He's too skinny, and he's going to take forever to get there. The shot is very far. He's bad in Australia. He's older for being a first-year player. I don't think the NBA is a very quick, what have you done for me lately? And he's just going to struggle to get there. That's my opinion. I'm glad to be wrong. I'd love to see this be motivation for him, but I'm not there with him.
You were there. How did he look at the combine? He played well, didn't he?
I'm trying to be very professional in this. So I didn't think he looked that great. Like if you took away the second day, the first game he was like pretty good. I'll give him that. He made plays. His passing was there. Like he's not a point guard, but it was good passing. Is what you wanted to see. Point guard skills. The second game was really rough though. And that's kind of the dichotomy with him is like, okay, one day you have this, and then the next you have that. Like, what do you do with that with somebody who's so raw? Like the second game, he had 2 makes, and that was his. And he had 1 pass after his poster dunk. One of the makes was a poster dunk. The other was the transition leak out where he was already behind the defense. Like not tough. Like the poster was really good, but he missed a lot of basic plays. I feel like for every good play he makes, there's an equal and opposite negative play. That's how you get out of the rotation too.
That's what he was in Australia. It was like, man. What is that?
Yeah.
Who is this guy? And then it was like, oh, okay.
That wasn't by accident.
Yeah, he's funny. Last thing, shout out to Trenton Flowers, man. I think he made himself some money with guys dropping out. All right, so before we go, let me tell you about how Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and is now also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Well, that concludes this episode. I'm James. This is Rich. We just discussed our deadline afterthoughts. Tune in tomorrow. We are going to find some more guys to talk about. It's a lot going on right now. We will see you guys. Signing off.